The EU is about to force Hungary out of the European Union because of the whole LGBT debate. Just a month ago, the EU sent a commissioner to Hungary and Poland and declared these two nations a so-called LGBT freedom zone without the support of the president of those two nations and the will of the people. As a response, Viktor Orban, the president of Hungary, passed a new law detailing exactly where the government stands on the whole LGBT issue. In a moment, we're going to take a look at what that new law says, but before we do, let me just say, wasn't the EU supposed to just be a trading union? And now they're forcing these nations into submission because they disagree with them politically. You might not be from Hungary, but if they can do this to that nation, they can do the same thing to yours the next time around on another issue. Alright guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Soran. So to me, this is really interesting because it highlights a tendency recently that the EU has had to force its member nations into thinking like the majority. And to me, that's a big problem when we're talking about sovereign nations like all of these member nations of the EU. The EU is obviously not just a trading union anymore. It now has the ability to pass laws that supersede the laws of every single nation within the union. So the EU is saying that this new controversial law within Hungary is dangerous because it has the potential to infringe on human rights for the LGBT community. In March, the EU announced that it was going to make the whole of the EU a so-called LGBT freedom zone. These laws were obviously aimed at Poland and Hungary, so Hungary began asking itself the question, since we already have the same of most of the laws for LGBT like all of the other nations within the EU does, then what exactly does this LGBT freedom zone mean for us? Hungary then set out to make their stance on the LGBT issue clear. Their laws already are almost identical to all other EU countries except for when it comes to LGBT persons adopting kids or transgender surgeries. That's where they differ in opinion the most. Then, during the Euro 2021, some of Hungary's fans carried banners with anti-LGBT words on them. This made the German goalkeeper Neuer wear a rainbow armband in support of the LGBT community, and that's pretty much what it was. A few fans stating their unfashionable opinions, but it did lead to another confrontation about this new law that was passed in Hungary, which brings us up to today. So Hungary passed this new law, which deals mostly with the educational system. It says that schools should promote traditional family values and that in the educational system, homosexuals and transsexual relationships should not be promoted. The strictest part of the law prohibits display or promotion of homosexuality or gender reassignment in television programs, films, and sexual education in schools. So in the educational system and on TV, there will be limits to what you can promote as an LGBT person, but they did make it clear in the law that you could do in all other areas of life whatever you want. No one really talks about this, but in the bill is also that they will give much stricter sentences for pedophilia, which I think no one will disagree with. So if you want to be as kind as possible, it's Hungary trying to promote the traditional picture of what a typical family looks like, promote that in schools and on TV. If you look at it from the other side, it could be seen as suppressing the view of the LGBT community and authoritarian in nature because you don't allow certain things on TV. So Hungary is receiving a lot of backlash from passing this law, and recently Ursula von der Leyen, who's the president of the EU Commission, she tweeted this out. Very concerned about the new law in Hungary. We are assessing if it breaches relevant EU legislation. I believe in a Europe which embraces diversity, not one which hides it from our children. No one should be discriminated on the basis of sexual orientation. So she's obviously taking the viewpoint that this is just discriminatory in nature. And to respond is Zoltán Kovács, who's a government spokesperson for Hungary. He says in this tweet, "Dear von der Leyen, as the mother of 7 children, surely you understand the importance of being able to educate your children on these sensitive matters as you see fit. That's what this law is about. Oh, and also about creating serious criminal repercussions for acts of pedophilia." So that's where the fight is right now, and that's why the EU is contemplating kicking Hungary out if they don't comply with the laws that's in place in the EU already. 17 nation leaders of the EU, so that's more than half, have signed a letter condemning the legislation, and Ursula von der Leyen is now thinking about taking Hungary to the European Court of Justice over this whole issue. So this is quite severe. This is very important for Hungary. They could stand to lose a lot in terms of trade and international relations because they don't look to be backing down. They look to be standing their ground. But there could be serious repercussions for passing this law. So remember, no matter what you think about this whole issue, this was passed by a majority within Hungary. And this is where I really think it's a huge issue when the EU is treating a fellow nation like this. I get that the EU has rules and laws that you have to comply with, but Hungary joined the EU when it was just a trading union, when it didn't have all of these extra laws that kind of came along the way. And the same, by the way, goes for almost all of the nations who joined the EU sooner or later. They joined on a premise, but now the EU has become something very different. Now there's a social movement within the EU that's lobbying to kick fellow member nations out because they have unpopular opinions within their own country. These new laws within Hungary don't affect any other nations outside the country. And so far, they don't violate any form of human rights here. So what's going on? The EU is becoming something that's growing rapidly, and it's taking over in areas that were completely foreign to its origins. Polls show that people trust the EU when it comes to spreading democracy and democratic values and so on, but they don't trust the EU when they keep expanding and they keep overreaching with their authority. Look, I do think that there's a mentality within Hungary to not really have the same kind of patience for social justice movements that we're used to in the West. But at the end of the day, they are a sovereign nation, and if they legally, by a majority, voted in a law that's to some people looking from the outside is unpopular, then you don't think it's a bad idea to force them to change their internal laws as an outsider? This idea of needing everyone to think the way that you or I do is dangerous, and it doesn't make it less authoritarian just because we're in 2021. Making other nations bow down to the idea of the EU is arrogant, and sure, if they're breaking some kind of human rights violations and like all of that, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about unpopular opinions. We need to grow up and learn to handle the fact that not everyone's going to agree with everything you say and do. And you don't want to try to force some of these nations into thinking exactly how you do, because one day it's going to be your nation that has an unpopular opinion, and then the EU will be doing exactly to your nation what they're doing to Hungary right now. And trust me, that day always comes. Thanks for watching. Hit me with a subscribe if you liked the video, and have a good day.